The sun blazed over the desolate wasteland, casting long shadows across the cracked earth. The air hummed with tension as Tien Shinhan stood firm, his three eyes locked onto the monstrous figure before him, Cell, in his second form, a towering abomination of bioengineered horror. The creature's maw twisted into a smirk, oozing arrogance as he flexed his clawed fingers. Pathetic, Cell sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. You think a mere human can stand against perfection? Tien's jaw tightened, his muscles coiling like springs. He knew the odds were against him, but retreat was never an option. Not when the fate of the world hung in the balance. Tien had trained relentlessly under Master Shen, honing his body and spirit to their limits. His signature techniques, the tri-beam, the solar flare, the four witches technique, were legendary among martial artists. But today, none of that mattered unless he could buy time. Goku, Vegeta, and the others were recovering, gathering their strength for the final battle. Until then, it was up to him to hold the line. Cell lunged, his movements a blur of green and black. Tien barely dodged, feeling the rush of wind as Cell's tail whipped past his face. He countered with a rapid volley of ki blasts, each one detonating against Cell's armored hide with little effect. The bio-android laughed, swatting away the explosions like gnats. Is this all you've got? Cell taunted, before vanishing. A split second later, Tien felt a crushing impact in his gut as Cell's knee drove into his ribs, sending him skidding across the battlefield. Gritting his teeth, Tien forced himself upright. Blood trickled from his lip, but his resolve burned brighter. He clasped his hands together, fingers interwoven in a familiar stance. Kikoho, he roared, unleashing the tri-beam. A torrent of golden energy erupted from his palms, slamming into Cell with enough force to crater the ground beneath them. The shockwave sent debris flying, dust clouds billowing into the sky. For a moment, it seemed like the attack had worked. Cell was buried under the rubble. Then, with a deafening explosion, Cell emerged, his body smoking but unharmed. Impressive, he admitted, cracking his neck. But not enough. Tien's breath came in ragged gasps. The tri-beam was his ultimate technique, but it came at a cost. Each use drained his life force. He could feel the toll already, his limbs growing heavier. Yet, he couldn't stop. Not yet. With a grunt, Tien activated the four witches technique, splitting into four identical copies. They surrounded Cell, striking from all angles, kicks, punches, ki-enhanced blows, each hit designed to disorient and overwhelm. Cell snarled, lashing out with his tail, impaling one of the clones. It dissipated into smoke, but the others pressed the assault. Tien's real body channeled his remaining energy, preparing another tri-beam. Now, he shouted, as his clones grappled Cell's limbs, holding him in place. Cell's eyes widened as the golden energy surged toward him. This time, the impact was catastrophic. The ground split apart, the force of the blast sending Cell hurtling into the earth like a meteor. Tien collapsed to one knee, his vision swimming. His body screamed in protest, but he couldn't afford to falter. Somewhere beneath the smoke, Cell was still alive. And if he rose again, Tien would be ready. The battle was far from over. The battlefield trembled as Tien Shinhan hovered above the cratered earth, his arms trembling from the strain of the tri-beam cannon. Below him, semi-perfect Cell staggered, his monstrous form wreathed in smoke, but still standing. Krillin and Yamcha exchanged horrified glances. How much more could Tien give? You're burning through your life force, Krillin shouted, but Tien's eyes blazed with defiance. If this buys Gohan time, it's worth it. Then, the sky darkened. A new energy signature pulsed, one they hadn't sensed before. A figure descended, wreathed in a familiar ki. Piccolo? Yamcha gasped. But the Namekian's eyes were cold, his grin twisted. Not quite, he sneered. The voice was wrong, deeper, laced with malice. Tien's stomach dropped. Kami? The fusion had been unstable, but this was something else. The being, now calling himself Dark Piccolo, crossed his arms. You're all so desperate. Let me show you real power. Before anyone could react, Dark Piccolo lunged. His fist cratered the ground where Tien had been, forcing the exhausted warrior to flip backward. Krillin hurled a Destructo disc, but Dark Piccolo caught it midair and crushed it. Pathetic. Yamcha charged, Wolf Fang fist howling, but a single backhand sent him skidding through rubble. Tien gritted his teeth. They were already stretched thin with Cell, now this? Cell, recovering, chuckled. How entertaining. Another predator enters the fray. Dark Piccolo shot him a glare. You're just a failed experiment. I'll deal with you next. The betrayal was clear. Piccolo's darker half had taken control, and his goal was annihilation. Tien saw the opening. Krillin, Yamcha, keep Cell busy. I'll handle him. Dark Piccolo's arm elongated, stretching like rubber to grab Tien's throat. You're already half dead, human. Tien triggered the multi-form technique, splitting into 4. The clones swarmed, buying him a second to gasp. Solar flare. Light erupted, blinding Dark Piccolo. Tien followed with a volley of Dodone rays, but the beam shattered against Dark Piccolo's barrier. Predictable, he scoffed, regenerating his eyes instantly. Meanwhile, Krillin and Yamcha danced around Cell, dodging his tail strikes. We can't win this, Yamcha panted. Krillin's eyes darted to the horizon. We don't have to, just stall. He feinted left, then hurled a scattershot of energy blast to obscure Cell's vision. Yamcha capitalized, spirit ball slamming into Cell's side, but the bio-android barely flinched. Adorable, Cell mused, before his tail lashed out, impaling Yamcha's shoulder. Krillin screamed, rushing in with a Kamehameha at point-blank range. The explosion gave Yamcha just enough time to wrench free, blood dripping. Tien, meanwhile, was running out of tricks. Dark Piccolo's power dwarfed his own, and his stamina was fading fast. Then, an idea struck. He feigned collapse, dropping to one knee. Dark Piccolo loomed over him. Finally accepting your fate? Tien smirked. No. Buying time. From the shadows, Chaozu, silent until now, unleashed a psychic blast, freezing Dark Piccolo mid-step. Now, Tien roared, summoning every last drop of energy. Tri-beam. Cannon. The blast hit Dark Piccolo dead center, driving him into the earth. But the victory was short-lived. A hand burst from the smoke, Dark Piccolo, battered but grinning. Nice try. Tien's heart sank. Then, a voice cut through the chaos. Need a hand? Vegeta landed beside them, arms crossed. Humph. I didn't come for you. But that thing, he glared at Dark Piccolo, is an insult to Saiyan pride. The tides were shifting, but so were the stakes. As Vegeta charged, Tien realized, this fight was far from over. And if they didn't find a way to unite against both threats, none of them would survive. The battlefield trembled as Tien Shinhan soared into the air, his muscles straining under the weight of his decision. Below him, semi-perfect Cell smirked, his grotesque form oozing with confidence. The Z fighters were battered, Piccolo lay unconscious, Krillin's arms trembled from exhaustion, and even Vegeta, pride shattered, could barely stand. Tien's 3 eyes narrowed. There was only one way to buy time. Kikoho, he roared, slamming his palms together. A blinding surge of energy erupted from his hands, crashing into Cell with the force of a collapsing star. The ground shattered, the shockwave hurling debris for miles. Cell snarled as the attack pinned him, his feet digging trenches into the earth. Tien's veins bulged, his life force was the fuel, and he was burning it fast. Krillin's voice cracked with panic. Tien, stop. You're killing yourself. But Tien didn't flinch. Sweat poured down his face as he poured every ounce of his being into the assault. I won't let him reach 18, he gritted through clenched teeth. Even if it costs me everything. Then, Cell laughed. A deep, guttural sound that sent chills down their spines. His body began to glow, a sinister aura flaring around him. Pathetic, he sneered. You think this pitiful attack can hold me? With a sudden burst of power, he took a step forward, then another, pushing against the Kikoho's torrent like a man walking through rain. Tien's heart lurched. No. It wasn't possible. He was giving everything, his life, his energy, and Cell was just walking through it. His arms shook violently, blood trickling from his nose. Desperation clawed at him. He had to hold. Just a little longer. Then came the twist, the moment that shattered their hopes. A voice, cold and mocking, echoed from behind them. How amusing. The Z Fighters whirled. Standing atop a crumbling rock, arms crossed, was another Cell. Perfect Cell. His smooth, polished form radiated overwhelming power, his smirk dripping with malice. Vegeta's eyes widened. Impossible. When did he? The answer struck them like a physical blow. While Tien had been holding off semi-perfect Cell, the real terror had already evolved. The creature beneath the Kikoho was nothing but a decoy, a puppet of flesh and energy left behind to distract them. Tien's strength gave out. The Kikoho flickered, then died. He collapsed to his knees, gasping, his body a hollow shell. Semi-perfect Cell dissolved into sludge, absorbed back into the true monster's tail. Perfect Cell flexed his fingers. You fought valiantly, he mused. But now, the game is over. Krillin's fists clenched. Piccolo stirred weakly, his regeneration struggling to keep up. Vegeta's pride warred with dread, he had been outmaneuvered, his arrogance leaving them all vulnerable. And Tien? Rage, shame, and despair warred within him. His sacrifice had been for nothing. Worse, it had blinded them to the real threat. Cell raised a hand, energy swirling in his palm. Any last words? Then, Gohan's voice, raw with fury, cut through the air. Leave them alone. A golden aura erupted on the horizon. The tide of battle was about to shift again, but not before the Z-fighters faced their darkest moment yet. The battlefield trembled as Tien Shinhan soared into the air, his muscles straining under the weight of his decision. Below him, the monstrous second form of Cell loomed, its grotesque frame pulsing with barely contained power. The ground was already scarred from their earlier exchanges, but Tien knew this fight was far from over. He clenched his fists, his three eyes narrowing in determination. "I won't let you take another step," he growled, his voice cutting through the chaos. Cell smirked, his tail flicking lazily. "Pathetic. Do you really think someone like you can stop me?" Without warning, he lunged, his speed a blur as he closed the distance in an instant. Tien barely had time to react, crossing his arms to block the crushing strike that sent him skidding backward. The impact rattled his bones, but he refused to falter. Digging his heels into the earth, he countered with a rapid flurry of punches, each strike aimed at Cell's vital points. But the bio-android merely chuckled, effortlessly dodging or deflecting every blow. Frustration burned in Tien's chest, but he forced himself to think. He couldn't match Cell's raw power, but he could outmaneuver him. With a sudden feint, he twisted mid-air, vanishing before reappearing behind Cell with a devastating axe kick. The attack connected, slamming Cell into the ground with enough force to crater the earth. Before Cell could recover, Tien unleashed a volley of energy blasts, the explosions lighting up the sky. Yet, as the smoke cleared, Cell stood unscathed, his grin widening. "Is that all?" he taunted. Tien's breath came in ragged gasps, but his resolve hardened. There was only one way to tip the scales. He spread his arms wide, his aura flaring violently as he channeled every ounce of his ki. "Tri-beam! Cannon!" he roared, unleashing a colossal wave of energy that engulfed Cell. The ground quaked, the sheer force of the blast carving a canyon through the battlefield. But even as the dust settled, Tien's heart sank. Cell emerged, his body slightly singed but otherwise unharmed. A valiant effort, he mused, but futile. Tien's body screamed in protest, his energy draining rapidly. He knew the tri-beam was consuming his life force, but he had no choice. Gritting his teeth, he prepared to fire again, pushing past his limits. Cell's patience wore thin. "Enough of this," he snapped, his aura surging as he charged. Tien barely had time to react before a crushing fist drove into his gut, lifting him off his feet. A follow-up elbow sent him crashing into a cliffside, the rocks collapsing around him. Pain lanced through his body, but he forced himself upright. Blood trickled from his lips, but his eyes blazed with defiance. "I'm not done yet," Tien spat, wiping his mouth. With a final, desperate surge, he launched himself at Cell, their clash sending shockwaves through the air. Blow after blow, Tien fought with everything he had, his movements becoming sharper, faster. He tapped into techniques long forgotten, mixing his crane school training with his own innovations. A sudden solar flare blinded Cell, buying him a precious second. Seizing the opportunity, Tien delivered a crushing kick to Cell's jaw, followed by a point-blank Dodone ray that scorched the bio-android's chest. Cell staggered, his smirk finally fading. "You insect!" he snarled, his body trembling with rage. Tien knew this was his chance. Summoning the last of his strength, he clasped his hands together, his aura burning like a dying star. "This ends now," he bellowed, unleashing the most powerful tri-beam yet. The beam tore through the air, its brilliance eclipsing the sun. Cell roared as the energy consumed him, his body buckling under the force. For a moment, it seemed he might be overwhelmed, but then, with a final, monstrous surge, he broke through, his fist slamming into Tien's chest. The impact sent Tien crashing to the ground, his vision swimming. As darkness crept in, he saw Cell standing over him, his expression a mix of amusement and irritation. "A shame," Cell sighed. "You almost made it interesting." Tien's body went limp, his strength spent. But as his consciousness faded, he smiled. He'd bought time. And in a battle like this, every second counted. The fight wasn't over, not yet. The battlefield trembled as Tien Shinhan stood before the monstrous second form of Cell, his body battered but his will unbroken. The air crackled with energy, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. Cell smirked, his grotesque form oozing confidence. You're wasting your time, human. Even your strongest attack won't be enough. Tien ignored him, his mind focused on one thing, buying time for his friends, no matter the cost. With a roar, Tien crossed his arms, summoning every ounce of ki left in his body. His muscles strained, veins bulging as he unleashed the forbidden technique, the tri-beam cannon. A blinding pillar of energy erupted from his palms, crashing into Cell with the force of a collapsing star. The ground shattered beneath them, rocks and debris hurtling skyward as Cell was driven into the earth. The sheer power of the attack sent shockwaves across the battlefield, rattling even the distant mountains. But Cell refused to stay down. His body burned, his regeneration struggling to keep up, yet he laughed. Impressive. But you're killing yourself. Tien's breath came in ragged gasps, his vision blurring. Blood trickled from his nose, his life force draining with each second the tri-beam continued. Yet he refused to relent. As long as I'm standing. You won't take another step. His voice was raw, his body screaming in protest, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. Gohan and Krillin watched in horror, knowing Tien was sacrificing himself. We have to help him, Gohan cried, but Piccolo held him back. He's buying us time, we can't let his sacrifice be in vain. The desperation in their voices mirrored the unspoken truth. Tien was pushing himself beyond human limits, defying fate itself. Cell's regeneration finally caught up, and with a furious snarl, he forced his way through the tri-beam, his body scorched but intact. He lunged, his fist slamming into Tien's gut with bone-crushing force. Tien coughed blood, his legs buckling, but he refused to fall. His arms trembled as he forced himself upright, his eyes blazing with defiance. I'm not done yet. With his last reserves, Tien unleashed one final tri-beam, this time aiming for Cell's legs. The explosion sent Cell staggering, his footing lost as the earth beneath him collapsed. The distraction was enough. Vegeta, seizing the opening, blasted Cell from behind with a devastating final flash. The combined assault forced Cell to retreat, his body struggling to regenerate. Exhausted, Tien collapsed to his knees, his body spent. His vision darkened, but a small smile touched his lips. He had done it, he had stalled Cell long enough. As darkness claimed him, he heard Gohan's voice, filled with determination. Now it's our turn. The battle raged on, but Tien's sacrifice had changed everything. His unyielding spirit had inspired his allies, proving that even against impossible odds, courage could tip the scales. In the aftermath, as Cell was finally defeated, Tien's legacy remained, a testament to the power of sheer will. The universe would remember his name, not just as a warrior, but as the man who stood alone against a monster and refused to yield. The future had been altered, not by strength alone, but by the unbreakable heart of a hero.